blood moon is a full lunar eclipse, and 4 of them in a row is called a tetrad. When they've occurred on the Jewish high holy days, it's coincided with major historical events, like the Six-Day War in 1967. 4 blood moons on the Jewish high holy days has happened only 3 times in the last 500 years. The next time it occurs is starting next spring on the Jewish Passover.
The recent discoveries released by NASA, the National Aeronautical Space Association, literally the best scientists in the world predicting the coming 4 blood moons. They are predicting that there will be 4 blood moons that began April 15th, 2014. That there will be a second, October the 8th, 2014. That there will be a solar eclipse in the month of March, the 20th of 2015. A third blood moon in April the 4th, 2015, a 4th blood moon, September the 28th, 2015. I want you to read my lips. These are NASA's predictions, not mine.
You know, as you're very well aware of all the prophecies, about signs in the heavens and the sun turning to darkness and the moon to blood. And so as I was looking this, I went to NASA's website because they have 5,000 years of eclipses recorded. Because God created everything mathematically, they can do this.
Right.
Well, I noticed that there were 4 total blood moons or total lunar eclipses in a row in 2014 and 2015. They fell on Passover and the Feast of Tabernacles in 2014, and then again on Passover and Tabernacles in 2015. I was blown away to see these 4 blood moons falling on the feast days, and I wondered how often does that happen? And I noticed it didn't happen at all in the 1800s, the 1700s, the 1600s. And so I went to the 1900s, and lo and behold, twice there were 4 blood moons in a row. And guess what years they fell? This is what we talked about, 1967 and 68 when Israel captured Jerusalem. And then right after Israel became a nation in 1948, they happened in 1949 and 1950. And so I thought this is an awesome sign. I mean, in Genesis 1:14, God said He created the sun and the moon and the stars to send signs. Typically, you only have 1 total lunar eclipse every few years. But to have 4 together in 2 years, tied to the biblical holidays, that's huge.
Quick and continuing reaction today after a nuclear deal was reached with Iran late last night. In exchange for rolling back its nuclear program, Iran gets an easing of many sanctions. But it's not a long-term deal.
Under the 6-month deal, Iran agreed to destroy its stockpile of weapons-grade uranium, restrict its production of nuclear fuel, and give inspectors daily access to select nuclear facilities. Speaking after the deal was announced, President Obama warned Iran that they must comply.
And if Iran does not fully meet its commitments during the 6-month phase, we will turn off the relief and ratchet up the pressure.
Skeptics, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, slammed the deal, calling it a historic mistake that would allow Iran to get closer to making a bomb.
And now the hard part begins. The U.S. and its allies have about 6 months to monitor Iran's progress.
Israeli and Palestinian negotiators will seek to reach a peace agreement within 9 months.
Our objective will be to achieve a final status agreement over the course of the next 9 months.
The United States is seeking to broker an agreement on a 2-state solution in which Israel would exist peacefully alongside a new Palestinian state created in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, lands occupied by the Israelis since the 1967 war.
Secretary of State John Kerry is getting ready to return to the Middle East for peace talks with Israel and Palestinian officials. This video is from a trip he made there earlier this month, and we know the timing is important. Just last week, Israeli government expressed anger over learning the United States had been gathering intelligence on them through the NSA. Kerry is expected to leave on New Year's Day in what will be his 10th trip to that region since March, all part of a push to move the peace process.
This is the postcard from Jerusalem Not often you get to see the old city in the Golden Dome with the Dome of the Rock blanketed in snow.
Residents in Jerusalem battled to return to normality on Sunday after a powerful winter storm lasting days covered the city in snow. Most of Israel, including the West Bank, has been affected by the storm. This is the most severe snowstorm in decades in Israel.
Applause rings through St. Peter's Square as Pope Francis prepares to deliver his first Christmas message as the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. He decried the cost of war and called on atheists to unite with believers of all religions to work for peace.
So it's the end of the year, but are we heading for the end of the world as we know it? Economic turmoil, wage rage over living pay, spiraling national debt, high unemployment with benefits for more than 1 million people expiring tomorrow. The current economic climate has, understandably, caused a lot of fear and some unrest. One financial expert says it may be time to brace for the worst and prepare for financial Armageddon.
If you have never heard of Bitcoin, you are probably not alone, but the online currency is gaining popularity around the world, and now in eastern Kentucky. WIMT's Brittany Nada looked into the cyber money to try and answer some questions about how it works.
City commissioners in Vico recently passed a measure to pay its police chief in Bitcoin. It may be a forward-thinking movement, but many of you probably do not understand how it works.
Bitcoin is a new currency traded against the dollar, yen, euro, and every other currency around the world.
Several bald eagles have died in northern and central Utah this month alone, all from similar symptoms of a mystery illness. Well, today we have learned of 2 more birds found this week on the verge of death. That brings a total of nearly 24.
Statewide, 21 bald eagles have been found with the mysterious illness just this month. 16 have died. This one was found by hikers in Bountiful.
I've never seen a bald eagle that close.
We've never had this many birds come in of one species coming in this quickly in this short span of time and having them all die.
The bald eagle is just what America stands for, and so to see one hurt, injured, you know, that's not what you want to see.
Now, what was strange about this is that this man's speeches and directions for the whole world had to do with new times upon us as human beings, new directives for global peace, and the need to give up current citizenship for world citizenship. This man continually and constantly spoke of world order and the benefits of all men dwelling together in peace. Now, even though I was disturbed in the dream, I was also being pulled into this because it sounded very, very good. World peace sounds good until you see the cost. Let me tell you, there is no world peace. I constantly heard the word new order, world order, and new times.
Final thought from you, because you say openly in your essay that you're reserving judgment on all of this as we learn more over the next several weeks. But one of the things that you talk about in a broader perspective is global powers trying to rearrange themselves into a new global world order.
I think we have to watch it carefully to see whether, in fact, this is the opening of a new moment in international history.
So my freedoms and my patriotism were instantly being eroded from my understanding.
Our other big story, a clash between church and county, a place of worship being told to take down a sign with an American flag and a message to support the troops.
The church put up this sign to cover an old billboard that was run down. However, support the troops is becoming quite controversial here in Nevada County.
Why would you knock something that's got an American flag on it that says support our troops? I have no idea. I really don't.
Fourth grader Gracie Brown and her brother Luke put a lot of thought and effort into their Christmas cards.
It included Merry Christmas, and when you open it up, it says thank you for your service and the American flag.
52 students at Grace Academy in Prosper spent Friday morning making these cards.
I hope you have a blessed holiday.
They planned to hand deliver to bedridden veterans at the VA hospital in Dallas this morning. When Gracie and Luke's mom found out they wouldn't be able to, she was outraged.
This wasn't the country that I grew up in, that you couldn't say Merry Christmas. So we found out not only could you not say Merry Christmas, you couldn't say God bless you in a card, and you couldn't reference any
Scripture.
People were buying right into this plan that this man was releasing through the airwaves at staggering rates. No resistance. No one was fighting it. No one was saying anything publicly. I can't tell you if the airwaves were controlled to the point where you couldn't come on and say certain things. You can't just get on the 3 major networks and say what you want.
Superstar patriarch of Duck Dynasty, Phil Robertson, put on indefinite hiatus now by A&E for comments that he made to GQ magazine about homosexuality.
Well, Martha, after some heavy lobbying by gay community, A&E suspended Robertson for his personal comments made to GQ magazine by Barbara Walters, along with the Klan, described his family as Bible thumpers who just happened to end up on TV. In the article, he calls homosexuality a sin, and I'm quoting, "Everything is blurred on what's right and what's wrong. Start with homosexual behavior and just morph out from there. Bestiality, sleeping around with this woman and that woman and those men. Don't be deceived. Neither the adulterers, the idolaters, the male prostitutes, the homosexual offenders, the greedy, the drunkards, the slanderers, the swindlers, they will not inherit the kingdom of God."
On the top of them, I began to see cameras, little white, oval-looking, hot dog kind of looking cameras. And in the dream, it was revealed to me that these cameras knew the whereabouts of everybody's vehicles.
The FBI is now revealing its next generation, if you will, effort to weed out the bad guys. As you mentioned, $1 billion. They've put it to the test so far in several states since February. The facial recognition system compiles mugshots, DNA information, iris scans, and voice recognition, which matches surveillance images with photos of known criminals. It can also track suspects in surveillance footage by honing in on their faces in a crowd. Several public advocates are also wary of the project, fearing it will eventually extend beyond criminals to include images of the innocent. It remains unclear, though, if images of the general public will also be included when it is nationally implemented by the year 2014.
Very unusual things began to happen with law. I began to see local municipalities, and no longer were police departments the enforcers of the law of municipalities, but military police driving very unusual looking vehicles that I now know to be called Humvees. These vehicles that I saw were black.
New crime fighting tool is so big, some might call it a tank.
Hey, I think they are. Now, it's really called an MRAP. I checked on that. And tonight, these massive military vehicles are in the hands of 4 mid-state police agencies.
A handful of police departments are now getting them free of charge to protect their officers. Hendersonville SWAT team already has 2 Humvees. The problem is they're not armored. The MRAP gives them that much-needed protection.
We plan to paint it black, just the same as our other tactical vehicles, and put police markings on it, and that's probably all we're going to do.
I see how God's hand guided me. When I began preaching many years ago, it was not with any thoughts that I'd be preaching to large audiences.
Come to the cross! His gospel is for everyone!
God has done this.
Christ is alive! In modern America today, there is a vacuum of the soul.
Our country's in great need of a spiritual awakening. Well, there have been times that I've wept as I've gone from city to city and I've seen how far people have wandered from God. Of all the things that I've seen and heard, there's only one message that can change people's lives and hearts.
There is a way if you come by the way of the cross.
I know that there are many people that dispute that. People don't want to hear that they're sinners. To many people, it's an offense. The cross is offensive because it directly confronts the evils which dominate so much of this world.
These 4 blood moons happen on a high holiday 4 times in a row with a solar eclipse in the middle is beyond the null hypothesis of probability. This is something that the Bible, using the sun, the moon, and the stars as a communication system to humanity, says something is about to change, and world history is going to change forever.
Hey tubers, just bringing you a raw video here because I'm on the road. Just wanted to tell you that there's 3 articles in the links description below that are critical. I like that word a lot lately. Critical, because everything's critical, man. Okay, so I think it was last week, probably around February 20th, President Mahmoud Abbas said that he was finally going to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Now, this is important because they have said that they would not move forward with a peace agreement. You know, Israel said they would not move forward with a peace agreement until the Palestinians would do that. So now that he's doing that, that has taken a major roadblock out of the way. The second article that I have for you is that it says that the Palestinians, I think Saeb Erekat, the meerkat, he is rejecting moving the negotiations past April. And it says in the article that April is the end of 9 months. And again, 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says they will say peace and safety, then sudden destruction as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So in the verse that says peace and safety, there's reference to childbirth, to pregnancy. And these peace talks are 9 months, ending in April, and the Palestinians are rejecting any extensions past that time. So, the final article, the most revealing, is that it says that Obama is getting ready to move in to finalize John Kerry's work on the negotiations and to force the sides into a framework agreement. Now, I believe this is important because Daniel 9:27 says that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many, so he will make strong. To me, that sounds like there is already a covenant in place, and then he will strengthen it, make it strong. Now, what's interesting to me is that why would you make a peace deal for only 7 years? You know, if Daniel's 70 weeks, there's 1 week remaining that the Antichrist confirms the covenant for 1 week. That's prophetic speaking for a week of years, 7 years. Why would you create a peace deal for 7 years? You know, why would you say, hey, I'm going to be at peace with you for 7 years, and at the end of the 7 years, it's all on like Donkey Kong, right? Well, that's because it's a framework agreement. It's an agreement over the course of 7 years to divide the land. So they will put together their framework agreement saying that, okay, over the course of 7 years, you'll move out of the West Bank. You know, over the course of 7 years, you'll surrender parts of Jerusalem. Over the course of 7 years, you're going to move out of the way and divide your land to create the Palestinian state. So the problem with that is that I made a video about this earlier. Muhammad, he's not a prophet, but they call him a prophet. He's a false prophet of the Islam faith, has said that, you know, I don't know if it's in their book or how it is, but they've said that they made a peace deal with a certain people, and then 2 years into that deal, they broke the agreement and attacked those people. So it was like they put everybody at ease, and then they attacked those people, and they said that that's the same strategy that they want to use with Israel. So that's the same problem with the 7-year peace agreement. You know, they'll create the peace agreement, they'll act like they're going along with it, and then in the middle of it, you know, the Bible talks about multiple wars. There's the Psalm 83 war, there's the Isaiah 17 war, Damascus being a ruinous city, you know, taken away from being a city. And then there's the Gog-Magog, which is Ezekiel 38:39, which talks about the outer enemies of Israel being Russia, Iran, Turkey, and some others, where, you know, when the more local countries couldn't defeat Israel, then they send in the bigger dogs. They send in, you know, those ones I just mentioned. But in that Gog-Magog battle, it says that God supernaturally defeats those enemies, and that then Israel will know that I am the Lord. That's in Ezekiel 39. So the Palestinians are rejecting any extensions past April. As of the making of this video, that is 6 weeks away. At the same time, 6 weeks away, is the beginning of the blood red moon tetrads. Lunar blood moon eclipses that occur on Passover and then Feast of Tabernacles, Passover, Feast of Tabernacles. And everybody should know this. The last 2 times it happened were major for Israel. Israel became a nation in 48. There were tetrads in 48-49. Or 49-50, I forget. And then Israel took Jerusalem as being a city. In 67, they recaptured their capital city. There was a blood moon tetrad associated with that. There will not be another one of these tetrads for at least 100 years or more. I forget the exact number. So Obama is coming in to force the framework agreement. This is so biblical, and anybody that isn't convinced that Obama is the Antichrist by now, you're not heeding Jesus' advice. Jesus said, be not deceived. You know? Everything that Obama puts his hand to, he succeeds at. It says that, you know, by craft, by deceit, he will prosper. That he will seek to change times and laws. Look at how he's changed America in the course of his presidency. I could go on and on about this stuff. But the main point is that if this thing is going to happen in 6 weeks, what does that mean for America if America's leading the charge on it? It means get your house in order. Because, you know, I believe in the rapture, but I also believe that America is going to reap what it's sown, and it's violating scriptural law. You know, if you curse Israel, you will be cursed. Zechariah 12 said, if you divide Israel, if you divide Jerusalem, you will be divided. So those things are coming to America. Mark my words. It's going to happen. America is about to fall just like Sodom and Gomorrah. This nation is about to be judged because of its foolish decisions. One more point about Obama. You know, there's a verse in Daniel that says that he understands dark sentences, dark sayings. When he was being elected, he said, you know, yes, we can. That was his motto. You play that backwards, it says, thank you, Satan. Now, in recent weeks, I've been speaking about how there's death and life in the power of the tongue. Now, these spiritual laws, they apply for everyone. Jesus spoke in parables because he was hiding the spiritual laws from the enemy, from the wicked. And it's supposed to be those that are born again by the Holy Spirit that have these things revealed to them so that they can operate in these spiritual laws. But what's ridiculous is that the heathen, the enemy, the unsaved, know more about spiritual laws than the church does. And then when you talk to the church about spiritual laws, they say you're preaching New Age. Who invented this stuff, God or the devil? You know, God's the one that put these laws in place. God's the one that taught these things in parables. So back to the dark sayings, the dark sentences. Because death and life is in the power of the tongue, and Obama understands these things, these spiritual laws, Obama cursed this nation, and most people aren't even aware of it. Obama said, America is no longer a Christian nation, but now a nation of, you know, this and that, Muslims and Buddhists and all these other guys, right? So when the leader rejects Christianity as the spokesperson for the country, he's then spoken a curse, spoken even a prophecy over this country, that he said this country is no longer a Christian nation, and look what it's become since he's said that. He understands dark sentences. He understands the power of the tongue. Why is it that he succeeds at everything that he does? So the countdown is on. This looks like the real deal. This looks like the finishing blow for America. I'd like to find it again, but I read about a dream or a vision that someone had where they had a vision of an eagle. Now this eagle came down and there was a snake on the ground. This eagle was sitting on like a tree stump, and somebody might have to look this up for me and post it in the comments because I don't recall where I saw this, but the eagle came down on a tree stump, and the snake, bit the eagle and hurt it. Okay? Well, instead of flying away, the eagle just stayed there. Well, again, the snake attacked now I remember there was a trap. There was like a snare, like a bird trap. I don't know if it was like a loop kind of thing or what, but I think there was a snake there too. Anyway, the eagle was attacked twice and still failed to fly away, to mount up on wings as eagles. I'm trying to think of that Bette Midler song, but I'm not going to sing. Anywho, so the eagle's attacked twice, does not take off. And then the third time the eagle's attacked, it totally falls and dies. It's captured, it's destroyed. And that's America. 9/11 was the first attack. 2008 with the financial collapse was the second attack. And the third attack will finish America. Jonathan Cahn has put forth some incredible information with the Harbinger, and according to his teaching, I would think that the fall of America would be, on the Shemitah cycle, Yom Kippur, 2015 perhaps. That's only my guess, based on the information. I'm not saying that that's when America will fall. However, America will fall because everything that's happening is according to biblical prophecy. So, check out the articles, but more importantly, prepare your hearts. Don't just know Jesus up here, have a relationship with him here, and, he says that if you confess your sins, he's faithful and just to forgive you your sins and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. So, repentance is still part of the deal. You have to change your mind about following sin. Change your mind about sin and follow Jesus and live a life of righteousness. Confess the Lord Jesus Christ and follow him. I'm telling you, if you haven't understood this message by now, you're seriously running out of time. I mean, if we're down to weeks before major prophetic events, get your house in order. Jesus is coming, and he ain't fooling around. You either know him or you don't. Do you know him? That's what I got.
What if I told you Jesus came to abolish religion? What if I told you voting Republican really wasn't his mission? What if I told you Republican doesn't automatically mean Christian, and just because you call some people blind doesn't automatically give you vision? I mean, if religion is so great, why has it started so many wars? Why does it build huge churches but fails to feed the poor? Tell single moms God doesn't love them if they've ever had a divorce, but in the Old Testament, God actually calls religious people whores. Religion might preach grace, but another thing they practice. Tend to ridicule God's people. They did it to John the Baptist. They can't fix their problems, and so they just mask it, not realizing religion's like spraying perfume on a casket. See, the problem with religion is it never gets to the core. It's just behavior modification, like a long list of chores. Like, let's dress up the outside, make it look nice and neat. But it's funny, that's what they used to do to mummies while the corpse rots underneath. Now, I ain't judging. I'm just saying, quit putting on a fake look. Because there's a problem if people only know that you're a Christian by your Facebook. I mean, in every other aspect of life, you know that logic's unworthy. It's like saying you play for the Lakers just because you bought a jersey. See, this was me too, but no one seemed to be on to me. Acting like a church kid while addicted to pornography. See, on Sunday I'd go to church, but Saturday getting faded, acting if I was simply created to just have sex and get wasted. See, I spent my whole life building this facade of neatness, but now that I know Jesus, I boast in my weakness. Because if grace is water, then the church should be an ocean. It's not a museum for good people, it's a hospital for the broken. Which means I don't have to hide my failure, I don't have to hide my sin. Because it doesn't depend on me, it depends on Him. See, because when I was God's enemy, and certainly not a fan, He looked down and said, I want that man. Which is why Jesus hated religion, and for it He called them fools. Don't you see so much better than just following some rules? Now let me clarify. I love the church, I love the Bible, and yes, I believe in sin. But if Jesus came to your church, would they actually let Him in? See, remember He was called a glutton and a drunkard by religious men. But the Son of God never supports self-righteousness, not now, not then. Now back to the point, one thing is vital to mention. How Jesus and religion are on opposite spectrums. See, one's the work of God, but one's a man-made invention. See, one is the cure, but the other's the infection. See, because religion says do, Jesus says done. Religion says slave, Jesus says son. Religion puts you in bondage, while Jesus sets you free. Religion makes you blind, but Jesus makes you see. And that's why religion and Jesus are two different clans. Religion is man searching for God. Christianity is God searching for man. Which is why salvation is freely mine, and forgiveness is my own. Not based on my merits, but Jesus' obedience alone. Because He took the crown of thorns and the blood dripped down His face. He took what we all deserved. I guess that's why you call it grace. And while being murdered, He yelled, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Because when He was dangling on that cross, He was thinking of you. And He absorbed all your sin and He buried it in the tomb, which is why I'm kneeling at the cross saying, come on, there's room. So for religion, no, I hate it. In fact, I literally resent it. Because when Jesus said, it is finished, I believe He meant it. A Roman cross. Yeah, Jesus died on that. See, I don't care what you believe, just read history. It's a historical fact. So the question we have to ask is, what will you do with this man of misery? 6 hours on a piece of wood? It somehow completely changed history? But see, we've pimped Jesus out. We've made a sacrifice foolery like, oh, I'll just go to church on Easter and make the cross nice jewelry. But see, the cross wasn't a symbol of faith. It was a symbol of death. I mean, imagine if someone had an electric chair hanging around their neck. So the question we have to ask is, what was different about the man that day that could take something that kills and turn it into something that saves? See, He was unique because He was innocent. God actually became a man. Now that's different. And on the cross, He says, I'm not dying because of me, I'm dying because of you. Not just for the sins you have done, but for the ones you will do. And on the cross, God treated Jesus like He was us. Poured out His wrath on the Son so that He might show that He's just. See, and He took our filth and He took our sin. And the beauty is when you trust in Jesus, you're included in Him. But first, walk with me what it must have been like that night when the Son of God looked like He lost the fight. No heartbeat, no breathing, no sign of life. Jesus tasted death, and it didn't feel right. Have you ever let that sink in, that Jesus died? No, really, Jesus actually died. 3 days in the tomb, lifeless laid His remains, like the king had given up his crown, like he'd given up his reins. But all of a sudden comes Sunday, something started to change. From the grave you heard a thump, and blood started pumping in His veins. Heart beating, blood pulsing. Instantly Satan felt his power break because the Son of God was dead. Now the Son of God is awake. And every breath that He took was another punch to Satan's face, showing we are not under our sin, but we are under grace. So rejoice with me, because when He went to the grave, you did too. And when He rose from the grave, your life became new. He says, my job is finished. Let your new life begin. You can actually have freedom. Stop wallowing in your sin. See, the chains have been broken. The stone's been rolled away. God doesn't love a future you. He actually loves you today. So you're clean, you're spotless. The curse has been squashed. That's all baptism is just showing you've been washed. So rejoice with me because we are not awaiting the verdict. He's already said not guilty, and the resurrection proves he assured it. Because our whole life we feasted on sin and we couldn't pay the tab. Jesus walks over to our bill and says, I'll take care of that. So stop trying to pay your own debt. In fact, God doesn't even expect it. Because the cross shows payment given, resurrection shows payment accepted. And instantly we were perfectly spotless when we were spiritual whores. Because when he walked out of the grave, he left our sin on the floor. And he turned around and looked at where his body lay and says, sin? See, that's where you're going to stay. So church, walk in freedom because you are free. The resurrection is just a stamp saying it's a guarantee. A royal decree proclaiming we're children of the King. So even when your mouth can't, let your life always sing.
So I find that there's a ton of talk right now in the world with my friends, with my family, my neighborhood about sex and about what sex is. And I also find, at least as a follower of Jesus, that there's a chasmic gap between culture at large's definition of sexuality and God's definition. And by that I mean from the scriptures, as Jesus would define it, as the biblical authors would define it. So basically, as I read it, culture at large defines sex as recreational play between two consenting adults. So it's just physical, it's just the biological coupling of two bodies for sexual release. And what's the big deal? As long as it's between two consenting adults, if it's mutually pleasurable, I mean, what in the world is the big deal? It's just play for grown-ups. And then the church often comes along and says, okay, here's all the rules. Here's where you can do it and here's where you can't do it. But they buy into culture's definition of what sex is. And then basically say, well, you can do it, but only in marriage. And oh, by the way, only marriage between a man and a woman, not a man and a man or a woman and a woman. And to most of us, that's just nonsensical. If you're not a follower of Jesus, you hear that and you think, what kind of crazy, uneducated, traditional, outdated thing is that? That makes no sense. But reality, we have to get behind it to the definition of what sex is. So as I read the scriptures, as I read the teachings of Jesus, here's how I understand sex. In Genesis chapter 2, the word echad is used, that in sexuality, two people become echad, or it can be translated one flesh. This is a graphic, weighty word that basically means, when it's put together with this word flesh, fused together at the deepest level. That in sex, a man and a woman come together and are fused together at the deepest level. It is the bonding of two people into one entity, body and soul, physical and spiritual, because there's no way to bifurcate the two. So it's actually a much higher view of sex than culture's. Culture basically says, hey, it's just play, it's just biological, what's the big deal? God says, whoa, 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 no, it's way more than that. It's two people who become one entity and then over and over again enjoy and express love for one another through sexuality. Now, inside of marriage, this is beautiful because it takes two people and it doesn't let them drift apart. It keeps them together. It keeps them echad, or one. But outside of marriage, this can be dehumanizing because it can turn people into objects for basically self-gratification. And then every time you walk away from a sexual partner, it's as if you tear echad, as if part of you is lost. And you do that enough times and it starts to hollow you out from the inside. So I, as a follower of Jesus, think that we need a higher view of sex than culture at large is, not a lower view. We need to get back to the mysterious, beautiful, powerful reality of what happens when a man and a woman make love. seems to me that the vast majority of us, at least myself, have a crystal clear idea of what marriage is. It's this idea of a man and a woman, or depending on where you're at, a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, in a relationship for life. But even through all the controversy and the volcanic backlash over the last few years to the ongoing redefinition of marriage, one of the really weird things to me is that through all the op-eds and controversy and the ongoing war on both sides, little or nothing was said about what marriage is for. I mean, what's the point of it all? And in a nation where 1 in 3 first marriages ends in divorce, 1 in 2 of all marriages end in divorce, which is an insane stat. If you think about the odds, if you're engaged right now to be married, the odds of your marriage making it past a few short years are 50-50. So why in the world would anybody take that risk? I mean, that's a legitimate question. So as we think about this idea of what marriage is for, as a follower of Jesus, my worldview is shaped by Jesus and the biblical authors. And when I read in Genesis 1 and 2, we read about kind of the proto-humans, Adam and Eve, and the first marriage of all time, and there's this iconic line, for this reason a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. The first marriage of all time. And it's really interesting, if you read the story behind that statement, for this reason, you see a laundry list of reasons for marriage. For example, you see friendship. We read that it's not good for the man to be alone, that we were created for relationship. Secondly, you read what I would call gardening. There was this Garden of Eden, this world that was raw and untamed and wild and in need of ruling, of help, of a man and a woman to come together and to rule over it, to make something of it. And it's way too much work for one person. Adam needed help. He needed Eve. He needed a partner to do what God had put in his heart before. So obviously this is core, this is vital to what marriage is all about, a man and a woman coming together around something larger than themselves. If the point of your marriage is your marriage, it will self-destruct. If the point of your relationship is your relationship, it's only a matter of time until the wheels come off, because marriage was made by God to exist for something so much larger than itself. So you have friendship, you have gardening, you have sexuality. Obviously we were created as sexual beings as part of how God made us, and marriage is the venue to express and enjoy our sexuality. You have family, you have that line, be fruitful and multiply. It's going to take more than one man and woman to rule over the earth. It's going to take all of the human race. And then we don't live in the Garden of Eden anymore. So in the wake of what we in theology call the fall, this idea of sin and its entrance into the human story, now I think a fifth reason is added for marriage, and that is this whole idea of becoming more like Jesus, becoming more like the image of God, the people that God made us to be, which is one of the best things about marriage. I mean, my wife sees the real me, not the real me that I am now, but the real me that I'm becoming, the man that God made me to be, and she pushes me and pulls me to that end. So she brings out the best in me, and living in close proximity to her, it exposes the worst in me. And this is such a great thing, because it means that I'm in transit. My marriage is a main vehicle for me to get to where God's called me to be. So those are kind of 5 reasons that I see theologically for marriage. The problem is, that's not why most of us get married. Most of us get married to be happy. But happiness is the byproduct of a healthy marriage. It's not the reason for. So if we go into marriage chasing after happiness, all that does is prime us at best for disillusionment and at worst for a 50-50 divorce rate. But if we go in chasing after friendship and gardening and sexuality and family and to become more like Jesus, then that sets us up for a little bit of the Garden of Eden.